What is up? What is up? What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Year of the Vet. And if this is your first time, welcome to Year of the Vet. And Year of the Vet is the podcast created for the veterans, for the military members that are getting out, for individuals who are just in transition of their lives and are looking for a story, lessons learned from other people's mistakes or other people's successes. Year of the Vet is created by me, Robert Graves, author of How to Grow a Beard, a military transition guide back into civilian life. And my intent with Year of the Vet is to be able to share stories, not just my own, because the book was my own story, but now it's time to share stories of other individuals who are out there paving the way and have just a bunch of knowledge that is sitting inside their mind that they don't really have the opportunity to give out. So we're trying to reach out on a wider scale to bring people up out of the mud, out of the dirt, out of the service, and into a successful life that they're looking for. So as the podcast gets older, I'm getting more in tune with how this stuff works. So now Year of the Vet is on iTunes, and you can also download the Year of the Vet app and have that on your homepage so you don't miss a beat. And you can listen to every episode that we've gone through over and over again, comment, and interact with the show. So go ahead and visit iTunes, subscribe, download the shows that you're missing, listen to them all, and more importantly, share the knowledge with somebody. Share the knowledge with somebody that you may know that may be getting out soon. Share the knowledge that Year of the Vet is a thing. Year of the Vet's a podcast out there that has veterans' best intentions all gathered up in one area. Lastly, if you know someone that would like to share their lessons learned through transition or deserves to be highlighted, send them over to the Year of the Vet website and connect with me and message me. And we'll work on getting them connected as a guest. So lastly, before I introduce the guest of this week's Year of the Vet episode, connect to Year of the Vet through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So again, that's Facebook, Year of the Vet, all one word. You can find it on iTunes, Year of the Vet, all one word. And then Twitter, how2 grow a beard. Instagram, how to grow a beard book. But enough of me. I am extremely, and I know I say this for every guest, but that just speaks to the quality of the individuals that keep coming onto this show and volunteering their time and efforts. But this person right here, the one and only Rachel Hetzel. Rachel and I had been introduced through another guest I had on the show, Travis Collier, author of Command Your Transition, and she and I had been playing email tag for a while until I finally got her on. And what's good about this is that in this episode of Year of the Vet, it's special because it's the episode that's wrapping up Women's Month. And what better way than to introduce to you an Army veteran with just a potato sack full of knowledge to hand out. And I'm telling you that you're going to get to know her as well as I did through the conversation. And if you follow it and you're able to stick with us, I'm telling you, there's just so many little gems. And I'll touch on some of them right now. She gives tips on negotiating for salary and tips on writing the intentional resume. We talk about mentors and not necessarily the fact that mentors have to be a person, but a particular situation or environment can be a mentor as long as you're learning something to progress you forward. She talks about her wake up, and not necessarily in the physical sense, but more of an enlightened sense, more of a state of what am I really supposed to be doing with my life and how do I get there? Which leads her literally to the road of Boulder Crest retreat, in where she learns more about PTG, and we talk about PTG being post-traumatic growth. And I just learned about the term about a month ago, so I'm excited for her to introduce what post-traumatic growth is to the Year of the Vet community. So, man, I'm just telling you, stick with it to the end. Reach out to Rachel. I'm going to have all the contact information at the end, so reach out to Rachel, reach out to Boulder Crest Retreat, and just reach out to another person who needs to hear this, because there's so much knowledge on the mind side of transition, not necessarily the working side. So I'm excited to bring this to you. Thank you for continuing to join Year of the Vet over and over again, and get to those social media sites, subscribe, and then share, because that's how we're going to build our veteran family up from the bottom with a stable base and have them reach their pinnacle of success. So let's get right into it. So, Rachel, thank you so much for joining You're the Vet, being part of this family. And I asked you to come on because you're going to end Women's Month. We're celebrating the women, and especially the women in the military. And man, you and I have talked offline already and got to know each other, and I'm excited for this conversation. And like I said, if it's just for me, so what? Because you're interesting and you have, guidance and wisdom. People are reaching for the wisdom that you're having, and we're going to talk about it. And you mentioned that you just had to wake up one day, and we'll get there. But I'm excited because I'm excited. And so so you should be excited.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm actually equally as excited. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we come up with and where this conversation goes. I'm curious. I'm very curious.
Great. So, Rachel, I'd like to, just for the listeners, kind of build rapport of who they're listening to right now. Who is pre-military Rachel into Rachel, the personality?
Sure. So pre-military Rachel, and to be honest with you, I think I mentioned this a little bit, but military Rachel and post-military Rachel, they all have one very foundational thing in common, is that they all followed the rules and they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They did what was next and what was expected. And there was no really outside the box thinking, right? So high school, I had played sports, didn't get into trouble. I was in the orchestra. I was a nerd. And then after high school, you go to college. So I went to college and I got a degree in something that was fascinating to me, but absolutely useless. So I was a very well-educated bartender. And then my student loans started coming due. So what do you do? Bartending wasn't going to do it. So I joined the military. And the Army paid off my student loans. And I, as an enlisted soldier, as an enlisted older soldier, by the way, so I was 23 when I went to basic training in May. So I was like one of 5 people in my entire company that were over the age of 18.
Yeah.
And that was kind of fun. But it very quickly made me realize that I had a little bit different experience than some of the other people that I was joining with, right?
Yeah.
As an enlisted soldier.
Yeah.
And so I did all of the things that I was supposed to be doing, and I stayed out of trouble, and I did my own thing. So I did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
I also never really challenged myself. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were a band nerd, right?
Mm-hmm. And, orchestra, but
orchestra. And then you played sports. And then you put yourself through college, and then you end that with, I've never really challenged myself.
Yeah, and none of that was a challenge.
Okay, well,
that sounds really arrogant, but I didn't really do any of it with excellence. I didn't do any of it overwhelmingly good. I passed.
Yeah.
I got my C. In some cases, D was for diploma, but I never really challenged myself to really excel at anything. I was mediocre.
Now, where did you get the idea to get into the military?
I really hope that my mother never hears this, but I came home from school one day and there was a recruiter in my living room. My mom had called the recruiter, and I was so mad. I walked out, and I'm never joining the military. Don't you know? 3 years later, I was standing in a room full of people with my hand in the air, so help me God. And I never really told her that that's where I got the idea, but that is where I got the idea.
It's we're twinsies, because I wrote a book called How to Grow a Beard, and it's my moments getting into and during and then my transition. But that was similar to me. My mom and I had gotten into a fight about something about my dad. Long story short, she's called me, and my best friend had enlisted the year before, and she said, you need to join the military like Chris. And I was like, I'm never joining the fucking military. And then like 2 days later, I'm in the recruiting station, like signing papers.
Yeah. if she had told me not to get a job at McDonald's, I probably would have gone and done that. Whatever she was going to tell me not to do, that was the thing that I was going to do. So if she tells me to join the military, of course, that's not what I'm going to do until I decide it's what I'm going to do.
Thanks, Mom.
But to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
My parents were both a huge influence on that decision. They were both in the military. My mother was actually the first woman drum major in the United States Army. Pretty proud of that.
Nice.
And my family, they were all West Point Army. They all served, and so I grew up around that. But because I was mediocre at being rebellious as well, and that was my way of not doing anything, of not doing that, not falling in line. Was I'm just not going to join the military. That didn't work out, so I'm not very good at being rebellious either.
So why didn't you go officer?
So a lot of people ask me that question. I didn't go officer because the way I understood it was that there are only 4 tracks you can take as an officer. And as an enlisted soldier, you can be more specific in the job and the career path that you take.
Yeah.
And while that's true, you don't have much control over it. That was something I learned later on. But in addition to only having the 4 career paths, they wouldn't pay my student loans. They would only pay me more, which doesn't ensure that my student loans actually got paid off. Yeah. So, I put a little thought into it, and I always kind of knew that the military was not going to be a long-term career for me. It was going to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
Okay.
Yeah, that was always something that I knew.
Well, okay, tapping into that, how did you know that? Because you did go in as a more mature individual, an older student, so to say, right? And you go in as an enlisted at, 22, 23, and you have to listen to 17, 18-year-olds kind of bossing you around for a while, right? Was that kind of the factor, or you knew prior to going in that this was just kind of a stepping stone?
I knew prior to going in that this was going to be a stepping stone.
Okay.
At least that was my hunch. And I always felt like if this was going to be a long-term thing, like maybe I'll love it. And this will be my entire life, and that will be awesome. And if so, then I can always go officer later on, or I can stay enlisted. The options were there.
What was it a stepping stone to?
I had no idea. I had no idea. I majored in anthropology, sociocultural anthropology in college. I watched people. That was what I wanted to major in. That's what I wanted to do for a living, was watch people.
Which turned into a master's in psychology, which is like the best blend ever, right? So.
Yeah. So now, interesting fun fact is I was able to, almost 20 years later, go to my mom and say, "See, Mom, sociocultural anthropology turned out to be something. Human terrain analysis." Yeah. It served me well. It served me well. Everything, I think I read this actually online somewhere. Somebody posted something on LinkedIn today about everything that you're experiencing is preparing you for something.
Yeah.
You may not know what it is. Yeah. But everything that you experience and the meaning that you put behind it is preparing you for something. And so even my ridiculous degree in sociocultural anthropology was preparing me to be better at my job as an intel analyst in the military. I had no idea that was going to be the case, but I was able to call upon that experience because it's something that I was passionate about at the time.
Yeah. And we're going to skim through your military experience because like you said, you did what you had to do to kind of get through, but you did receive some awards for being fantastic, and you really play it down, which kind of speaks to who you are as a humble person. So you don't have to talk about that, but you do have to talk about that a little bit.
That's fair. So again, not really ever pressing myself or challenging myself too much to the point where it was wildly uncomfortable. I wasn't a particularly stellar soldier, and actually that was kind of the joke, is that I was always kind of a crappy soldier. I was a really good analyst and a really good leader, not an awesome soldier. I don't follow ridiculous orders very well. I don't do busy work. And anytime I was ever told to stand out in the yard and flip stones, that just didn't work. So I was not a great soldier. Until one day I decided that's you need to step up your game or step out. And so that's what I did. I just sort of decided you either step up or step out.
Was there a key moment that you were like, okay, I got to wake up?
No, it was more of, I actually don't even know what the impetus for that was. It was just get your crap together.
Yeah.
Get it together. I do recall Drill Sergeant Thomas in AIT reminding me a few times, gently nudging me to get my crap together. And actually, when I was graduating AIT, she pulled me. I was talking to her. She pulled me aside, and I was like, Jill, I just got to ask, why did you give me so much junk the past few months? Why? She goes, because you're better than what you're doing. And I think that was one of the first times that I just sort of went, yeah, okay. All right.
I'm catching on to some themes.
What themes are you catching on to?
So it's kind of like foreshadow for the listeners, but one, I don't know if it's your first wake up. It may be one of many, actually. But, and then two, that's a mentor, and you harp on mentor, and you are a mentor. So those are two themes that I'm putting together, and I'll see if that's true when we wrap it all up. But
I definitely think you're onto something, because mentorship is huge in my world, and most people think about mentors as, the people that you want to be like in the world. I think about a mentor as anybody that teaches you something about yourself, even if it's something that I don't ever want to do. Thank you for teaching me that lesson.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will talk about like a bad breakup, right? And I can't believe that happened to me, and he did that, and she did this, or whatever. And it was a terrible relationship. Whenever I hear somebody get out of a terrible relationship, the first thing I say is congratulations, because they just taught you something. They just taught you something. Congratulations.
Yeah. Have you read Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck yet?
I have.
Okay. So, to fill in everybody listening, basically, it's to sum it up, it's the same kind of concept. You learn from your mistakes, and then you find out how to grow from it, and it's growth mindset, and it's kind of the key terminology in psychology right now. But that's what it's all about, taking those bad moments that we consider bad or failures or mistakes, and then how do we bounce back and move forward and grow and learn from it. So I use it now with, I don't use it. I've always used it. It's funny because psychology I majored in psych as well as you. And the thing is that everything that I've learned in psych, I'm like, oh, I've been doing that for years. It's you just putting a new word on it, So
yeah.
When that's something I try.
And
to
a lot of it is intuitive, though, right?
Yeah.
So whether you've been studying it or not, a lot of it is intuitive. There are a lot of people out there that just make these decisions and have this mindset naturally. You don't need to be taught that thing. But why is it that they have that? That's always the question that I ask. What is it? What's different about them that I actually had to read a book in order to learn that, right? What's different about them? What's different about their experience? What are they doing differently?
Yeah.
So when you're looking at people who are successful either in the military or not, embracing transition with flexibility or not, what are they doing differently if they are defining their lives as successful?
Yeah.
Right? What are they doing differently that I'm not, or somebody who isn't?
Now, staying in the camis right now,
sure.
There's a mentor that you hadn't labeled a mentor at the time. So that means that there's people around that are trying to lead you without you knowing that they're trying to lead you into a place of being a better person. For individuals who are still in camis right now and haven't realized that, can you kind of tap around who they should be attaching themselves to prior to getting out, because you did have a mentor that helped you transition.
Yeah, I did. So there's different, I don't like the word phase because it implies benchmarks, like physical benchmarks, right? But there are different stages of preparation, right? So when you decide that you're not staying in, that's one stage, right? All right, so what do you do next? Well, you got to figure out what your resources are, and you got to figure out what your decision points are. So what do you do next? After you figure that part out, then what do you do? I think just like that ex-boyfriend taught me something at that one particular point in time, and now I'm done with that mentor, that ex-boyfriend mentor, because I moved on to a different stage in my life. As you move on within different stages of that cycle, that part of your life, your mentor should shift with you. You should grow into something new at each stage. So I don't think that there's any one particular type of person, but there's definitely the people that represent the knowledge and the experience that you want to have. That's what you should be looking toward, right? So if you are looking to figure out what your resources and your decision points are so that you can make the next decision, you need to find the people that have, one, either already done that successfully, or two, are experts in that field.
Okay, stop right there.
Yep.
So here's where we run into an issue, and it's not an issue until you're a little bit older and out, and it's, what do I want to do when I get out, right? So we now have this hindsight where it's like, okay, I need to find a mentor that's going to help. And that's what we're doing, right? That's what you and I do for a living. We pass on the information that we learned from, right? And we're giving back. We're building Maslow's pyramid, right? Establishing that base of knowledge. But if you're in and you're about to get out and all you can think about is In-N-Out Burger, because I'm on the West Coast, right? All you want is the beach, and just all you're thinking about is getting out in a year, and you're counting down your days, and let's say you just did one tour, you're 22, 23, and you have no idea what you want to do. And
that's perfectly appropriate.
Okay.
So think about the thing that I just said, though, right? Yep. Find the people that are experts in the field of what you're about to try and go do. I didn't say you need to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. I said what you're about to try and go do in this stage, identifying the decision points and the resources that you have. So that's just who is an expert at identifying the decision points in this stage. Who is an expert in identifying the resources that I have in this stage? Not about who's an expert in the thing that I want to do when I grow up, because hell, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, right? And it's always changing. It's always evolving, because as you grow, you're growing into something new. So I'm just saying, find the people and or the resources that reflect the stage that you're currently in. What is it that you want to, what do you want to experience? And how are you going to cause that experience to happen deliberately? That's something that I never did. So in hindsight, I can tell you, I never did anything deliberate. I went to college because I was supposed to after high school. I joined the Army because I had to pay my student loans. I became a contractor because that's what you do in my industry. After you get out of the Army, you become a contractor. Then I didn't do anything deliberately. I just did it because that was the next phase. And that's what a lot of people are doing when they're getting out of the military now, is that they're just doing whatever's next based on the things that they think they need to get done. Well, if we take a little bit more of a deliberate approach to each stage in that decision-making process, what are your objectives? What is it that you want to experience? What is it you say you're trying to do here? Do you want to live a life of financial freedom? Or do you want to live a life of purposeful, meaningful, personal fulfillment? There's nothing that says those two things can't go together, but you need to define what that looks like for yourself. And then you can find somebody that can help guide you through that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So realistically, what we need to start focusing on is having individuals start asking the serious questions, I don't know, 6 to 12 months prior to getting out. Because, like you were saying, if you're getting out and you have I did the same thing. I got out and I was like, I'm just going to relax for 3 months, and I had no focus, I had no purpose, there was nothing, and I swore to God I was never going to fix another radar or touch another wrench, and I ended up doing that for the next 6 years. I did the same thing I'd been doing for 10 years, for 6 more years, and then, I got burnt out. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So, that's what I was trying to get at. If you have no picture, right? How do you create that picture? Or how do you find somebody to help you create that picture?
This is strictly for your listeners who are Intel weenies, or
there's a
familiar
lot.
with the operational cycle as well. So you can actually map exactly what you and I are talking about right now to the targeting cycle and the operational cycle. You have the commander's objectives, the commander's intent. What is it you say you're trying to do here? What is the experience that you want to create in your operational environment, right? What is the effect you want to have? And from there, you can define your measures of effectiveness and your measures of success. From there, measures of effectiveness, measures of success, you can identify your capabilities, your resources, your challenges or limitations. And from there, you can essentially fire for effect, take action, right?
Yeah.
And then you go to the next phase of reassess, assess, evaluate, redefine your objectives, and wash, rinse, repeat. You can run that cycle over and over and over again. And those cycles, each phase of each phase of that cycle has a miniature cycle inside of it, where you're constantly reevaluating, does this fit my big picture objective of the experience that I want to have, the effect I want to have in my operational space? What is it that you want to do? How do you want to feel? And when I say what do you want to do, I don't mean what do you want to do for your job.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you want to do in your world? What do you want to do for your family, for yourself, for your community, for your kids? What experience do you want to have?
Yeah.
And I think, to be perfectly honest, I think we should be asking that question long before transition is even a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should be asking that question as part of professional development within active duty, because that could define whether or not somebody is even appropriate for a leadership role.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe warrant is a best case scenario, or maybe senior leadership. That's the way to go. But all of these things define the experience that you end up having, but it also creates the communication that you have with the people that you interact with, because that's how they see you.
Okay. So about 12 months out, you started focusing on transition. What was kind of, and we already kind of mentioned it was more of a smooth transition, but what were some transition headaches that you had?
So I transitioned when it was the ACAP program, I believe, right? ACAP, TAP, Transition Assistance,
yeah.
Right? And there was, I'll be honest, there was little to no accountability to actually going and getting anything out of that. So I went to get the signatures on my piece of paper.
Say what?
But I really, I really didn't get much out of it, but that could be the effect of me not putting much into it, to be honest with you, right? So I'm not going to blame the program, but I will definitely say that I had no idea how the civilian world, the civilian industry that I was going into worked. So I was in the Intel community when the Intel community was booming. So my transition was pretty smooth. I had a job 3 months before I even got out, and I was working when I was on terminal leave. So it could not have been more ideal, except for the fact that I had really no deliberate, like none of it was on purpose. None of it was with an end state in mind. It was just because, well, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I did all of that. But I do remember, I was actually thinking about this the other day. I remember in my first civilian job, I was still going to I was going to leadership based on chain of command rather than my company infrastructure, right? So I was going to the chain of command as I knew it, but it didn't even cross my mind that those were different companies and different contracts. It didn't even cross my mind. So I had no insight or awareness that was how that operated. And I probably should have. That was on me. I probably should have been a little bit more aware of that. But nobody, I never really got an education in how all of that works. And I didn't even know to ask. That wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, that comes with experience. That's a thing that you get with experience.
Yeah.
No bad blood, nothing lost, right?
Yeah.
I think the biggest hurdle, the biggest challenge that I was able to overcome with the appropriate mentor was knowing what my skill set, my experience, and more importantly, my potential was valued at, right? So I went in and I looked at what somebody with my experience was making in the military. I looked at, because everything's publicly available, right? You know how much your first sergeant makes because it's right there on the website, right? There's really not a comparable way of identifying how much you can bring to a company. You know, there's you can do some research, Glassdoor, stuff like that. You can ask around if you are feeling brave. But I really didn't have any way of valuing what I was bringing to. So when they would ask me what my salary requirements were, I was asking for what I thought the typical E6 might make doing something like that, which was about half of what a contractor would make.
What did you ask for? Do you mind
What did
asking?
I ask for?
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot like that?
I'll tell you my
junk.
number. I'll tell you my number if you tell me yours.
So the very first phone interview that I had, she said, what are your salary requirements? And I had heard somewhere along the line, don't be the first one to put out a number. Mm-hmm. So I remembered that, and I said, well, what is the pay band for a job like this? Mm-hmm. And the number that she put out was $75,000 to $90,000 a year.
Okay.
And I remember sitting back in my chair and going, oh, crap, that's like $15,000 more than what I was going to ask for. I was just like, oh, so embarrassed, even though I was embarrassed for myself.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, that sounds about right. I think we're in the same, I played it off like, yeah, we're in the same ballpark. We could talk about that. But in the back of my head, I was like, I totally missed the mark on that one.
Yeah. Lucky you. Nobody told me about that. I wish I'd known that trick. I got out, and my number was 50,000. Yeah, I'd get offers for 35 or 48. I'm like, no, I know I'm worth at least 50. I don't know what I'm worth. I know I'm worth at least 50. And then my first job was 56 base. And then if I traveled, I would make up to like 100, 120. But I had to be on the road for like 8 months, and I didn't, so you can see where that burnt out. But then I'd look at like Lockheed Martin engineers, the same pay type of work, and they're making like 80, 90. I was like, what am I doing with my life? So where did I go wrong? Yeah.
So I finally met, I finally got the courage to go to my mentor. Her name's Cynthia Davis, veteran and corporate, huge corporate success. And I went to her and I said, Cynthia, I'm so proud of myself. I think I just had an awesome interview, and they said that they're going to put out a contingent offer to me for this, for, somewhere between 70 and 90. We're going to talk about it. She goes, what? And I go, yeah, I'm so excited. She goes, are you kidding me? And she yelled at me. She goes, what are you doing? Send me your resume. So I sent her my resume. She sent it back the next day, and it was red marked up like you would not. It would look like somebody killed a chicken on this piece of paper. It was horrible. She tore it up, and I was devastated. And I'm going, I don't understand what just happened.
Yeah.
And so we sat down, and she made it very clear to me that my resume was, as it was, it was really just a list of the stuff that I had done.
Uh-huh.
And nobody cares if I was a service member of whatever, whenever. Nobody cares what awards I had. Nobody cares about how many people I led to do what. Nobody cares about that unless it speaks to and supports the thing that I want to go do in the future. And that was huge. That was a bell that could not be unrung ever. This was 10 years ago now. 15 years ago? I don't know. It was a long time ago. But that's a bell that cannot be unrung. Your resume, unless it speaks to what you want to do in the future, it's only a list of stuff you've done in the past.
Yep.
And so when I took that perspective towards writing my resume, now I had an objective statement that clearly stated the impact I want to have for the community I want to serve. And that says that I have intent. Not only do I have intent, but I have ambition and I have drive to go make that thing happen. And so now each statement with every job position that falls underneath that supports that objective. That became a much more powerful resume. Mm-hmm. So that I ended up crying at the end of that conversation. I'll admit that. Mm-hmm. I was in tears by the end of that conversation. But I will tell you that the very next interview, and actually the next 4 interviews I went on, all came with already funded offers for twice what I was being offered before.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't argue with the results.
That's
you
incredible.
Can't argue with the results.
That's incredible because, it's a very common thing for all of us that jump out of the military to undervalue ourselves. And yeah. I say it all the time, in the barracks, you're sitting there making $36,000 a year, and you think that's good money. And so when somebody's offering you 50 to 70 for doing that same kind of job, you're thinking they're doing you a favor, and then you find out that years later you've been really undervalued and overworked, maybe. So, and
I'll also add. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'll also add. I'll give you this as well, since we're talking about women in the workforce and female veterans. One of those interviews that I actually ended up taking that job, Cynthia also taught me how to negotiate, right? So she taught me, again, don't be the first one to throw out a number, and then always be prepared to negotiate, and here's how you do that, right? So I went in and I negotiated very well for about $30,000 more than what I was willing to settle for. And I was very, very excited about my new position, and I was very excited about the salary that I negotiated for myself. 3 years later, I was still with the company, and I was talking to the hiring manager, the program manager that had hired me. And he told me, he said, in all the years I've been doing this, I have never seen a female advocate for themselves in negotiating the way that you did. I said, well, what made mine different than everybody else? On average, females come in and ask for a pretty significant percentage less than most males because they don't think that they're worth it. And this was the first time that I had seen you come in not only on par, but above what most males ask for, which I thought was not only aggressive and ambitious, but a little bit arrogant, I'll be honest. And I said, okay, I'm all right with that. But then you came down to where most males come in. And I would really love to see other females value their contribution the way that you did. So that's my message to any female veterans that are listening out there, is to recognize what your value is and be prepared to advocate for it, because nobody else will.
So here we are. We've got a job lined up 3 months out. You leave the service, and then you move into the civilian sector almost immediately. And there's lessons to learn, right? I had lessons to learn. Like I wrote about the first 3 days that I worked there. I was waiting for like a lunch bell to ring, right? Or like somebody to come tell me to go to chow or something. And so there are all these. I was standing at parade rest at people's cubicles waiting for waiting for our meeting time.
Tell me I can go home now.
Yeah,
yeah.
It there was this a weird transition into the workforce because, I spent 10 years in. So, but you went through the process, like you said, kind of what everybody does. Blanket statement, everybody, right? But we go into something familiar, and then there's this moment where you're like, I don't care what I'm getting paid. Something's just not right here. I want to talk about that.
Yeah. So that, I know that the topic of this podcast is all about, veterans in transition. But to be honest with you, my life transition, my transition. So if you ask Rachel about her transition, that transition didn't happen until 8 years after I got out of the military. I mean, my transition into civilian life, that was a cakewalk. But when I sort of picked my head up and looked around and realized how asleep at the wheel I was, and how unhappy I had become. I actually called Cynthia back up. And again, man, I got to start telling some good stories about my conversations with Cynthia, because you're going to think that she's mean, but I called Cynthia on my way home from work one day, just telling her how horrible it was. I had a 2-hour commute, and I can't believe that this is what I do. And I think it was the third day in a row I had called her to ask her about something or tell her something. And on the third day, she said to me, she goes, "Rachel, I love you. And it's with love that I tell you, when the discomfort outweighs the fear, you're going to make a change." And then she hung up on me. And I went, what did I do? So then I went into this woe is me pity party for the rest of my commute home. That, I have a horrible job, my life is miserable, and now the one person whose opinion I value most in the world just hung up on me. Oh, I get it, though. I get it. Okay, I see what she did there. I see what she did. So the next day I wrote my resignation letter, and I had no idea where I was going.
Wow, the next day.
Yeah, I wrote my resignation letter the next day, and I didn't have a job to go to. Mm-hmm. I had a thing that I knew that I wanted to do. A thing and I think that's what made that previous position so uncomfortable, was that I knew what I really wanted to be doing, and I knew how far this was from that. Okay. Does that make sense?
What was it that you wanted to do?
I wanted to make more of an impact. For a number of years, I had a job as an instructor. I was a facilitator. I was, and actually the reason why I can talk about the operational cycle and the targeting cycle is because I taught that for a very long time. And I loved being a facilitator, and I loved particularly that topic, because it all came back to, what is it you say you're trying to do here? And does everything else that you're doing support that thing? If not, then the conversation is pointless. If it does, then let's talk about the details, right? That was my job for almost 5 years. 5 years about that, was to teach people how to think that way. And that was fascinating to me. And then the operational details that went behind that, fascinating to me. So I loved being a facilitator. I loved helping people think a new way and find new solutions and be creative in how they solve the problems that they have. All with that thing in mind of, what is it you say you're trying to do here, right? I loved that. And then I moved to a new position where I thought I was going to help to create a program to do that for another organization. So, long story short, didn't turn out that way. And this couldn't have been farther away from that feeling, that fulfilling feeling of helping people find a new way to frame their mindset around what it is they say they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I was miserable. What I realized in that time was what I really wanted to be doing was helping people think that way as it applies to their personal life. So when I was teaching that thing, I was teaching it as it applies to a commander's objective, a military operational objective, right?
Yeah.
But what if you applied those same concepts to the way you live your life? what is it you say you're trying to do here? I say I'm trying to be a good mom and raise my children to be flexible and independent. But if I say that and then go run after them every time they fall down, the thing that I'm doing and the thing that I'm saying, those aren't the same. They're not supportive of each other, right?
Yeah.
So what is it you say you're trying to do here? Are you trying to be financially free? Well, the thing that you're doing doesn't necessarily support the thing that you're saying. So I had decided that I wanted to apply those concepts to personal development, and I started with myself. So earlier that year, I started with myself, and I started educating myself. And I'm working more with Cynthia and working more with her team. Just getting a little bit more experience and really just learning about how we create the meaning behind our experiences and how we make those decisions about what it is we're saying we're trying to do here.
What does Cynthia do?
Cynthia is an executive consultant.
Okay. And so when you worked with her team when you took that time off and started working with her team, in what aspect were you working with her team?
Well, so I was actually still employed when I started working with her. I went to her to say, hey, can you help me get right? Because something's not right. Can you help me get right? And that's when she started essentially coaching me on a personal level. Mm-hmm. And she gave me some resources to educate myself and start to get right. And so every once in a while when I would get stuck, I'd go back to her and I'd say, hey, what's going on? What am I not doing? What am I not hearing? What am I not seeing? Mm-hmm. And like I said, one day she just said, you know what? I've been listening to you complain about this for weeks now. When you're done struggling, you're going to make a change.
Okay.
Essentially what she was telling me was that there was something about that struggle that I either enjoyed or got something out of. But that struggle was not uncomfortable enough for me to make any sort of changes until it finally was.
That's what we call a secondary gain. So there was something that you're looking for to kind of scratch you on the back or maybe coddle you in a way. But when you asked her, what am I missing? What am I not seeing? What were you living in at that moment? What did that feel like? Like, were you suffocating? Where were you at that moment?
At that point, I was, the first answer that comes to mind is effect. Mm-hmm. I was at effect. I was a victim. I can't believe this happened to me. I can't believe they said this to me. I can't believe this person did that to me. I can't believe that this is where I am. This is not, everything that was happening was an effect of something else, but it certainly wasn't my responsibility. I was not the cause of any of it. Mm-hmm. I was completely at effect, which makes you feel helpless and in some cases useless, right?
Yeah.
So I was completely at effect for everything.
Now, is that, as you look back now, do you think that there is a correlation between how the service was run and how the civilian side was run? Like, did you put more work effort into your projects versus your colleagues? Did they get more production out of you? Like, did you just feel burnt out, or you just didn't feel respected? What was it that you're like, hey, this effect is not where I'm supposed to be right now?
No, I never really felt suffocated or disrespected. I didn't see a correlation between like military style leadership. Everybody that I worked with was former service.
Okay.
So my direct supervisor was a Marine, and the vice president of my company was a Marine, right? So there was really no cultural issues. I think that
it was internal.
The way that the position, my understanding of the position that I was going into was a little bit different than what actually ended up being the case.
Gotcha.
But again, if you had asked me then for it, they told me something different. It's not I misunderstood or it was completely not an experience of my design. That's for sure.
I gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha. Okay. So that's interesting. So that happens. You call Cynthia. She hangs up on you. You turn your resignation letter a day later, no more than 24 hours later, the day after you're no longer commuting that 2 hours to work, right? The very next
that's
day,
an interesting story.
You wake up in bed, your alarm doesn't go off, you're kind of like well rested, and you're like, what did I just do? Where are you right now? Like, what's on your agenda the day you're unemployed?
So actually, I started freaking out the Friday before the day I was unemployed. So I started freaking out on Friday, going, "Oh my God, what am I supposed to do on Monday? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God!" And so again, I called Cynthia and I said, "What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do?" And she said, "Just get out a piece of paper and write down 5 things that you wouldn't normally do, and go do that. Just do something different." And all right, so I did that. I had, my family had moved recently, probably 5 months earlier. And to this point, I had not, the only place I had been in my new community was the road that takes me to the toll road. So I had no idea what was anywhere in my community. Right. So I had gone to work and gone home and gone to work and gone home. Again, I had a 2-hour commute, right? Gone to work and gone home. So I had no idea where I was in the world. So I turned on Monday on my list was find a coffee shop, drive around for 2 hours until you find something interesting. And then there was a couple other, do some chores around the house kind of things. So first thing on Monday morning, I got up and I got in my car and I drove around to find a coffee shop and to just drive around and look at some stuff. So I did that. And this is actually a really weird, I don't know if you believe in sort of universal intervention type of thing, but I definitely do, especially after this day. So the consulting firm that I had started, this was in March. Okay, so the consulting firm that I started in January, the previous January.
OnPATH?
And OnPATH LLC. Okay. And so for me, OnPATH is all about purpose, action, transformation, and health.
Oh, I didn't know it was okay.
Stay on path.
Say
so
it again.
I started that in
purpose?
Purpose, action, transformation, and health.
Okay.
All right. So I started that in January, and now we're in March that I find myself unemployed. Or, well, rather self-employed, without any clients, but self-employed, right? So I'm driving around, and I live out by Leesburg. And so I'm driving around, and I got lost in the hills in Bluemont. And I had no idea where I was or how far away I was from home. Turns out I'm like 8 miles away from home at this point. But I pull in a little driveway in Bluemont to turn around, and I look up in front of me, and I see these arches that says, "Welcome Home Heroes." What is that? I drive up the driveway, and I'm seeing signs to Kandahar, Bagram Air Base. Yeah, I'm seeing these very familiar names. I'm going, where did I just show up? Mm-hmm. Turns out I live pretty close to a place called Boulder, Crest Retreat, which focuses on their program is all about facilitating traumatic growth for service members. And they have a program called the PATH program, which is all about alternative training for healing heroes. So progressive alternative training for healing heroes. That's what their PATH stands for. So when I walked in and I introduced myself and I said, "What do you guys do here?" And they started telling me about it. They told me the name of their program, and I went, "Holy cow, this is weird. Here's my card." And I gave him my OnPATH card. And he's like, wait, what? It was just so sort of serendipitous, right? It could not have happened if I had gone to work that day or any other day, right? Unless I had been looking for something or open to something different, being allowed to show up in my world, I never would have found this.
Yeah.
And it's over a year later, and I'm still talking to their team. I actually was able to participate in one of their programs, which, by the way, changed the way, it completely broke my mind, changed the way that I think about and create meaning to the experiences that I have. And for any veteran out there listening, Boulder Crest Retreat, absolutely amazing team and amazing work. Please check them out.
Okay, you're skimming the surface, but I want to dive under it. What is PTG?
Sure. Post-traumatic growth. It's a relatively new science, but it's been studied for a number of decades, actually, a very long time. But it's really all about the narrative and the meaning that we provide to the experience that we have. So essentially, as it applies to combat veterans, for example, there's nothing, your experience doesn't define you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. You had an experience. What are you going to do with it? Right? So it's an alternative perspective to how we approach significant life events. Mm-hmm. Everybody struggles. There's no way of taking away that struggle. There's no possibility of taking away struggle. Struggle is inevitable. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a crappy day. How do you respond to that crappy day? That's what post-traumatic growth is all about. It's about learning the flexibility and the behaviors of balance. So they do a really awesome job of providing insight and tools to help do that, to create balance. So, for example, they teach transcendental meditation, right, which has now become a staple in my world. Mm-hmm. I love it. They also teach about behaving accountable for the things that you say, the things that you do, and the alignment that you have, and the balance that you take, the perspective that you have.
Okay, were you practicing mental training, practices prior to that, or because
no,
the reason I
really
ask is because I'm in my sports psych program, and before that I certified in hypnotherapy, and there were some vets in there that were there to try to get their minds right, that had gone through a lot, and long story short, I've more and more, the longer I'm living in this lifestyle, I see more retreats opening up for mental health retreats in like Boulder, Colorado, or yoga retreats in Aspen, and so I'm seeing a lot more of this. Now, I've tried myself to, and let me not kind of paint the image that I've tried on a daily basis and it's not working, but it's hard, right? It's hard to sit quiet and get into your mind and get out of your own way, right? So how was that process for you?
Well, so you opened the question with had I been practicing those types of things, and I immediately said no.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't until I went through the PATH program that I realized that I know all the right answers. Mm-hmm. I can regurgitate the right answers backwards and forwards. But all of that is in my head. Yeah. I wasn't practicing any of it. And that's what makes post-traumatic growth different than a lot of other retreats. And, I think experiences like, meditative experiences and yoga, things that are intended to connect you to yourself, those are intended to create a connection between your heart and your mind. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any combat stress. I didn't have those types of experiences that anybody wants to make a movie out of, right? But what I did do was spend a lot of time in my head. And actually, that's where I lived. That's what had gotten me to the point where I was at that job that it's the right thing to do, but I was miserable at it. Mm-hmm. And I was so in my head that I could justify it. I had to create logic out of everything. I had to analyze everything, and I had to understand everything, right? Well, no, you don't, because you don't control it. Mm-hmm. And when you can let go of something, that's actually when you open up the opportunity to allow something new to come into your experience. It's kind of, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's kind of like looking through a soda straw when you live in your head all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When you create, and to bring this back to transitioning, when you create such a specific plan to do anything that you have every detail accounted for, and you know that this is what I want to do, and this is where I'm going to go, and this is who I'm going to talk to, and this is this, and this. When you have all of that planned so carefully, you're looking through a soda straw and sort of saying, I know every possible outcome, and therefore this is the one that I'm choosing. And you're actually shutting off the opportunity for anything that you're not possibly considering to that point.
Yeah.
When you can be open to alternate options, still have an intent in mind, an experience in mind, and know the objective of what you're about to go do, you can balance that intent and planning with openness and flexibility and balance. You know, that creates the balance of, all right, what do you got? And that way when things don't go your way, you're not devastated.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to use the analogy and sometimes the physical action as well. I'll put something like a penny in somebody's hand. I'm like, just hold on to this. Just hold on to it. Squeeze your hand and just hold on as tightly as you can. And you know, if you make a fist for a while, some people can make a fist for 2-3 minutes, and then their hand gets tired and it starts slowly opening up. And then I'll put something else in there, like more money or something. And the mindset is that you hold on to that penny, that you hold on, just like you're saying, you hold on to that idea, that one thought so hard, or a relationship or a job, and you're holding on to it with all your might. And then you get fatigued, right? Your mind gets fatigued, your body gets fatigued, your whole being gets fatigued on holding that. And then when you open up your hands and you're finally done just squeezing the life out of whatever you're holding on to, then your hand opens up and you're ready to receive. So it's just a quick, I use that so quick, and people understand it like that.
That's such an awesome metaphor, because that's exactly how I felt after my week with Boulder Crest.
Yeah.
Was I went home and I went home and I let go of a few clients. I really appreciate the work that we're doing together. I'm just making a little bit of a change in my career, and I went a different direction, right? So I realized that there were some clients that were no longer aligned with what I wanted for the world, and that made room for new clients, and made room for new opportunities. So what you're just talking about, that fatigue of holding on so tightly that when you finally open up, now it's like it's a totally new muscle. It's super uncomfortable and super scary, but the stuff that is happening and seemingly unexplainable, right? Yeah. The stuff that is happening when you exercise those new muscles and when you exercise those new behaviors and create that discomfort that allows for change, the growth is exponential.
Yeah. And that kind of moves into a moment in your life, right, where a colleague that you had challenged you, talking about comfort zone, right? Challenged you to get out of your comfort zone by asking you to do what?
He asked me to write an article. He said, publish something. I don't want to publish something. I don't want to write. I don't like writing. And I wondered about it, but essentially he said, I bet you can't do it. I double dog dare you.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I have probably 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 beginnings of an article that I also are all really, deep thoughts. Deep thought number 1 through 10. And the only one that I could actually finish a page, 2 pages on was comfort zone. And that's because that's exactly what that was doing. I was writing about the thing that I was experiencing, and kind of occurred to me that that's how my career is transforming, in that first I started supporting people as they transition because I was going through this huge transition. And now as I'm settling into the thing that I want to do, those types of organizations and teams are the types of teams that I'm supporting now, and the types of contracts I'm building now. Mm-hmm. And the types of people that I want to work with are the types of people that know that they want to create an impact in the world and create change in the world? Well, because that's where I am now.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing this reflection of the thing that I really want most in the world is the thing that I'm meant to give. And so that's what I'm doing. But to get back to your point of, that article is all about getting out of your comfort zone, because that's what I needed to do more than anything else. And, there was a bunch of different experiences that came before that PATH program, but I really just can't say enough about it, because it wasn't until then that I realized I was confronted, like confronted with, this is how the world sees you. This is what you're giving to the world right now. Is that what you intended to do?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah.
I need to make some changes. It all required getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because when you're comfortable, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
You're safe and you never make any changes.
Yeah. I can reflect on that in my own life. Because like I said, I spent 6 years in a job I did not want to do because I was comfortable with accepting the money, right? And the same with the education route that because you see individuals in school right now. I talk to guys who are 2 months out from graduating and they're like, I don't want to do this. I just, I can't start over in school. Well, you're going to learn the hard way if you don't do what you'd like to do right now. We just get in this comfort zone and it really just messes with our mind. I listened to, I don't know if you heard of, there's a podcast called Finding Mastery, and it's with Michael Gervais. And recently he had Kristen Hawley, the creator of TEDx, on. She's kind of a thrill seeker. And she was telling this story about when she was a kid, she became a dive master by 18. And at some point she went to go become a skydiving instructor, and during one of her jumps, her chute didn't open, and she looks up and it's in a ball, so she had to cut the chute and go to the reserve chute. And then when she landed, everyone's like, "Oh my God, I'm so jealous! I've done 10,000 jumps, I've never had to use a reserve chute." But her end story was that you don't know what you're capable of until something puts you through the ringer, until you're out of that comfort zone. And then, you might be shaken up. She said she was shaken up for like the next 2 weeks, but, she jumped back on the horse, and, cause she knew that she had the internal fortitude, right? The maturity and the wisdom, and that she could trust in her training, and, she could trust in herself. And when
that's such a huge point right there. Yeah. Trust in your training and trust in yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Because everything that we do, everything that we're doing is training. Everything that, just like everyone, and from my opinion, everyone we meet is some sort of mentor, right? Everything that we do is training. You're being trained on whether or not this type of communication works or doesn't work. You're being trained on whether or not this type of behavior works or doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. And you need to trust that that's the thing that you want to go do. Yeah.
I didn't even know where to take. I have so many questions. I do want to be respectful of your time. And so what do I get to next? Or how about this? Where do I want to go? Okay. So kind of utilizing all that you've accumulated through your mentors, all that you've really kind of worked on yourself and accumulated from the Boulder Crest retreat. So taking all of that, what are you doing now? Not what are you doing now? Well, sure. What can you give back with all that information that you have now? What can you give back to the individuals leaving the service right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned over the past year, which, that's been my big transition time the past year and a half or so, right? The biggest lesson that I've learned is that connection between your head and your heart tells you everything that you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
That voice in the back of your head, it's not a voice to be ignored. That feeling of I'm in the right place, I'm at the right time. It's not a coincidence. That little tingle of this is not right.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely not something to be ignored. That voice between your head, or that connection between your head and your heart, is the thing that defines what you are, who you are, right? I used to think that who I was wrapped up in what I did. So I know an issue that a lot of people have when they're getting out of the service, and I've seen it in my clients, is if I'm not a colonel, then what am I?
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm still a colonel. Sir, respectfully, no, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that you will always have served. You will always be a veteran, and you will always be respected for the service that you provide, but you're not leading troops anymore. And not all people are the same.
Yeah.
So recognizing the connection not only between your head and your heart, but that the person sitting on the other side of your desk has the same thing going on. Recognizing that people are different than what they do. And that includes me. I didn't have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I struggled as much as I did, was because I did not recognize, and I'm still working on it. I work on it every day.
Yeah.
I think if you're not working on it, you're wrong. But recognizing that who you are and what you do, they're not mutually exclusive, but they're not so tied together that you can't overcome something.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, 1,000%. In fact, that's one of the key elements on helping athletes recover mentally from injury. The concept, the mindset, is to work on these individuals and let them know you have what are you outside of tennis, right? You're a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
you're a gardener, you're a part of the book club. Like, you have a personality, you have this other culture, this subculture that you're attached to, and so you are not tennis, you are not the Marine Corps, you are not the Navy, you are not a major, you are, you're a father, you're a you're a philanthropist, you're a you're a skydiver. So yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you that
you could just be a person that's struggling and may need some help.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
You could be somebody who just, I don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
And even just acknowledging that is an actual thing, and letting go of the ego that comes along with I'm an operator, or
yeah.
I'm a colonel, or I'm a whatever.
Yeah.
Letting go of some of the ego that goes with the thing that you do, and separating the thing that you do from who you are.
Yeah.
That, I think, so you asked what would be the biggest takeaway that I would have.
Gotcha.
That would be it, is recognizing that who you are and what you do are not mutually exclusive, and they're not separate, not completely separate. Who you are does not equal what you do.
Who you are does not equal what you do. What fill in this blank, and then I have one more question, and then I will let you get to your evening because you're on the East Coast. Do not listen to your peers when they tell you blank.
Oh, there's a few of them that are running through my head. But the first one that came up, do not listen to your peers when they tell you that you should write a completely different resume for every job that you want to go after. Do not listen to your peers when they tell you that...
Wait, no. You got to tap into that, because that's kind of what I had been told as well.
Yeah, that's what I was told.
Yeah. You can't get off my podcast without explaining that, because I'm interested.
Okay. So I know it kind of goes against traditional Like that's the guidance you're given. You
Uh-huh.
take keywords out of the job rec and you put it in your resume, so that you're picked up in whatever databases, and your resume speaks directly to that one job rec.
Mm-hmm.
So you should have a whole bunch of different resumes depending on how many jobs you're applying to. Well, if you follow the guidance that I got from Cynthia, right? And I've had a number of clients that have followed this philosophy as well.
Yeah.
And right, so your resume should speak to the thing that you want to do, and your experiences support the intent of that thing.
Okay.
Right?
So you're not saying, okay, so to clarify, so what I had been kind of preaching is that you want to take your master resume and take off of it what is relevant to that job, but you're not saying not to do that. You're saying don't put just random keywords and keep making resumes with keywords. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I think you should have, and please, this isn't. I'm not all about resumes, right? So I defer to the experts if I'm wrong. I'm just telling you what works for me, what works for my clients, and what fits with my philosophy.
Yeah.
So, but if your intent, your objective, the thing that you say that you want to do here is to, I want to make the best amazing widgets for this community, and this is the experience that supports me doing this. Here's the job rec that says you want to make widgets. Well, I'm going to make you the best damn widgets you're ever going to see, and here's why.
Gotcha.
And your resume should support that.
Gotcha.
But your objective is to make widgets, right? Because that's the thing that you're passionate about.
Yeah. I gotcha.
If you write your widget resume to talk about who's it, well, then exactly what is it you say you're trying to do here? Is it widgets or who's it? Because those two things aren't the same.
Yeah.
So find the thing that you say that you want to do, write your resume around that thing.
Gotcha.
And then you can tweak it for specific things, as long as those specific job recs, as long as those specific job recs represent the thing that you say that you're trying to do.
Okay.
If it's offline of your objective, then you're just fishing.
Yeah.
So I hate that advice of write your resume towards the job rec.
Yeah.
Because that's assuming that you picked the right job rec in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes a ton of sense. I am following. I'm following. I smell what you're stepping in.
Thanks.
Okay.
Picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah, I gotcha. You said you were getting into one more before I interrupted you. Do not listen to your peers when they say.
I appreciate LinkedIn and I appreciate social media for networking purposes, but if you sit behind your computer all day and that's all you do, then you're missing the boat. It's about relationships, right?
Yeah.
So don't listen to your peers when they tell you that you need to get on social media and you need to be doing this type of networking or that type of networking. There's no cookie cutter for any one person.
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating relationships based on your intent and people that you're talking to, recognizing that heart-to-head connection in somebody else and coming from that yourself. Right? So don't listen to your peers when they tell you to just get on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the more connections you have on LinkedIn, the better off you are.
1,000%. 1,000%. Okay. So the very last question I have for you is just kind of how Travis introduced us. Travis Collier. Okay. He was a guest on the show. At the end of the show, I asked, do you know any other individuals who have gone through the transition process that might have any kind of knowledge to give or lessons learned to pass on, or maybe a good story to tell that would be on this show? That would be a good fit for this show.
I'm running a credits list in my head. Cynthia is a veteran. Her transition, I'm not going to call her out on how old she is, but her transition was much longer ago than she would prefer to admit, I think. So she would be an awesome mentor for your community. I would also like to introduce you to some of the staff up at Boulder Crest to talk a little bit about what they do, because they definitely affect transition.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's reintegration into home. Sometimes it's civilian life or military to civilian life. Sometimes it's you've been a civilian for the past 15 years, but you still haven't come home. You still haven't gotten back into it. So it's a mental transition. It's not a career transition that they deal with. But I would love to introduce you to some of their team.
I'm in.
Yeah, you down with that?
I'm in. Absolutely. 1,000%. Yes.
All right. Because, they deal with the highly driven, high performer type of veterans that they want success and they want results in their life, and they want to grow past their experiences, and that's what they excel in. It's awesome work.
Well,
so I'd also introduce you to Cynthia as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want Cynthia on here because she's been a large part of this conversation. So.
Maybe don't tell her that.
Oh no, I'm gonna tell her to listen. So, no, but I put a big thank you. I love you to death to, at the time, Staff Sergeant Michael Washington. That was my Cynthia, and it wasn't more of him kind of like, excuse my language, like digging in my ass. Like he was just more of a lead by example. And so like I was able to see him every day and see how he interacted. And so I'm a better person because of him. And so he's my Cynthia. So like I get where you're coming from. And I preach mentors, and man, so yeah. I didn't
really take the time to shout out to some of my mentors while I was in uniform, but I'll leave you with this little story. There was a point when I was active duty. I was struggling pretty hard with some personal stuff and some medical stuff. I was struggling pretty hard, and one of my commanders, Steve Finley, I swore he hated me. He saw me struggling, but I worked for him obviously, but saw me struggling, counseling statements and through the chain of command got in my butt on a whole bunch of stuff, and just I was miserable all around. That was the last position I had before I transitioned out. When I transitioned out, I found out that he gave me a letter of recommendation based on my performance, my potential, my performance and my work, but mostly my potential. And I sent him a thank you note to say, thank you very much. It was a kind of surprise. And he said, he essentially said that he hated to see me struggle, but he knew what I was capable of doing, and he wanted to see me go on and be successful.
Yeah.
And I think that there are so many officers and NCOs that look at the soldiers that they lead and the service members that they lead that way. And I think you had asked in your questionnaire what's the difference between civilians and veterans. I don't think that there's much of a difference between civilians and veterans. I think that there's a difference in mindset on how we look at performance and what it is we're capable of doing. And that's just, to me, such a good example of that. He was able to see beyond how I was behaving and what I was doing to see what I was actually capable of. And that, to me, is leadership.
Yeah.
And so, shout out to Steve Finley, but shout out to every other leader that saw something other than what was really in front of them.
Do you, oh, man, so many. I had a great time. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about?
I think we've hit all the bases. I
okay.
mean, yeah.
Do you have any contact information you want to share with everybody?
Do I have? I'm sorry.
Do you have any contact information that you mind giving out, or I'm gonna put? I have stuff that you gave me that I'll put on to your bio, but are you just on LinkedIn?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. I can be hit up on LinkedIn. If you put up my contact information for everybody, I'd appreciate that. I'd also really appreciate it if you could put up a link for Boulder Crest.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Huge resource. I can't say enough about them. Amazing team, amazing mission, amazing effort. So yeah, I'd appreciate the contact of those. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Rachel, I've had a blast. Thank you so much for it's been kind of a back and forth. We've been playing email tag. So I'm so glad that Travis introduced me, and this was by far, I can't say it's the best because I'd be singling other people out, but I had a good time. It was the best conversation I had. No, I had a great time, Rachel. I want to keep in contact with you, and I know we're going to talk offline many more times, but thank you so much for being a part of You're the Vet, and I hope that people kind of stuck around, and you know what? I know the ones that stuck around are the ones that needed to hear what needed to be said. So thank you for being a guest, and yeah.
I appreciate what you're doing, and thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
So this is the latest episode of You're the Vet. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you stuck through it. If you can, definitely share it with somebody that may need to hear the words that were said today, the messages that were given, and just all the little gold nuggets that you can put in your pocket and give to somebody else. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in to You're the Vet one more time, and we'll see you next time.